Hey y'all, welcome back. And this is a video intended to be sort of a overview introduction into the instructional materials for Module 6, which focuses on transgenerational and experiential models for family and couples therapy, couples counseling, family counseling. And it's also intended to sort of be a bridge between our discussions of psychodynamic features of family therapy to the model we're going to discuss this week. And I think what will be a great place to start is just to acknowledge how much of the interaction between each one of us is unconscious, and what that kind of evokes from us when it comes to sending and receiving messages between each other, how that affects the attachment behavioral system, and how we as clinicians can approach assessing, naming, and providing or facilitating repair when people come to us for assistance in a family context, and even in an individual context, how we can facilitate sort of corrective emotional experiences between therapist and client. So let's start out with just acknowledging that communication, human communication, is 93% nonverbal and 7% verbal. So it's important to note that overwhelmingly, how something is communicated is weightier, more impactful, perhaps more important than what is said. How is often more important than what, right? So whenever I'm working with a client in a couple's, family, or even an individual's context, I'm looking more for how things are happening, more so than what is happening, okay? And let me sort of describe a little bit about at least the theoretical foundations for that approach. So you'll remember we have just, I know I'm kind of harping on this and repeating it over and over again, over communicating the attachment behavioral system, right? Support exploration, welcome the return, right? In an ideal world, we are, when we welcome the return, providing safety, soothing, and sense-making. In a transgenerational setting, the parent is providing these things from a place of experience, a place of wisdom and knowledge for the little person who's learning. The executive generation is providing this for the learning generation, and at times consulting with the consulting generation for making sure that goes as well as possible, right? Now, get a little bit more space here. Let's take a look at what's happening neurologically in the brain. This is your brain. In the brain, as messages are being sent back and forth between people. So you may remember from previous instruction, especially if you've had me for psychopathology, there are three main parts of the brain that are particularly important when it comes to sort of having a perspective or having an impact on the psychotherapy process, right? We have the lower brain, the brain stem, right? This is the part of the brain that controls autonomic functions, right? So this is where this part of your brain is activated when we're talking about reflexes, we're talking about heartbeat, your breathing, beginning to sweat, perhaps when you're nervous, right? Those types of things are, that part of your brain is activated when those, in controlling those functions of your body, among others. This circle here represents your limbic system, right? It's the midbrain, right? And this is where, in many ways, your threat sensors are. That's your amygdala, right? Which is two sort of almond-shaped in size parts of your brain that are sort of working with a couple of other parts of the amygdala, or sort of the limbic system, to take in information through your five senses and assess, am I in danger or not? And then also working with other parts of the limbic system to sort of create and activate either or responses to this threat, either fight responses, flight responses, so running away, avoiding, freezing, right? So these are sort of the three F's you may have heard about before that are sort of common threat responses. Fight, flight, or freeze. Freeze is kind of like when people, they're kind of in a panic state and they aren't sure which way to go, right? I want to add, and this is purely from my mind, I want to add a fourth F that will be relevant here, and that is moving forward, right? And so the brain, this is probably perhaps what explains the 93% of our communication being nonverbal. This part of your brain, this amygdala, this threat sensor, right, is taking information from your five senses about safety for the most part outside of your conscious awareness, right? So it's also one of the first parts of your brain after the brain stem to develop, and these parts of your brain at a very early age are pretty well connected, right? So this is an adaptive aspect of humanity that has allowed the species to survive despite not necessarily being on the top of the food chain for the vast majority of our evolutionary existence, right? That sense you get where maybe the hair stands up on the back of your neck, or the sense that you're being watched, this is all occurring here and here. And then as we go through adolescence and into early adulthood, it's beginning to happen here, right? This is your prefrontal cortex. And this is important in family therapy and psychotherapy in general because it is essentially our most human parts of our brain. It is in charge of empathy and perspective taking, our ability to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and understand, at least on some level, another person's experience. It's in charge of emotional regulation and self-soothing. It's in charge of planning ahead and following through. And assessing risk. Which risks are worth taking, right? So, these are all quite relevant and active when a parent is trying to welcome the return of a child, right? Or when a couple is trying to support each other as they regulate their emotion, they assess risk, they plan and strategize about how to solve a problem, right? And it's relevant for how they interpret the behavior of each other. Are they threatening to each other, or are they inviting to each other, inviting the move forward, right? And we are very fortunate at this point in psychological history to have had research done that can predict success of overcoming challenges to invite the way forward and improve development, and at a very high rate. Some can predict success at a 90 or better percent rate. And we have sort of a series of defined sort of practices that couples, parents, and families can put into play that facilitate success with these everyday challenges, right? So, our job in many ways as clinicians is to assist families with recognizing when they are having a fight, flight, or freeze response, and then helping them to change the way that they're communicating with each other about these threatening challenges in a way that invites a move forward, right? And so, in this module, in addition to in this video, in the overview, I'm going to share with you a classic video of what has been called the still face experiment. This is a experiment done by researchers led by Dr. Edward Tronick at the University of Massachusetts at Boston, starting in the mid-90s and progressing until today. Will demonstrate just how impactful a more or less non-responsive parent can be upon the psyche of an infant, right? And also how that same type of dance, first of all, can be repaired, and then how it also kind of shows up in adulthood through a video that has been provided and is accessible on YouTube that features Dr. Tronick and Dr. Sue Johnson, who you've read about, is sort of the leader and founder, so to speak, of emotion-focused therapy. And I'll also include an example of using emotion-focused sort of approaches in both parent-child sort of strategizing and therapeutic approaches, therapeutic strategies, and also adult-to-adult strategies. There's an example of emotion-focused therapy, an emotion-focused therapy session that I will show you. And so I think this module is building toward sort of helping you to develop your own style, develop your own sort of theory about how people change from patterns in both relationally, psychologically, behaviorally, that have started out as solutions to previous problems, but then have outlived their usefulness and are causing problems themselves. How we help people make the jump from that to essentially taking their next step in their own growth and making adjustments to the patterns that they are using to get through everyday life in a way that is mutually satisfying between them and the people that are in their sphere, their families, their couples, their everyday platonic work, peer relationships. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this module influences you. It will build toward our videos in Module 7 that will be about kind of tying a bow on this term, right? And helping you kind of just make some of your first attempts to develop your own sort of theory of change and how you can go about facilitating change for your clients from your own theory of change. I think you will find that my theory of change is deeply rooted in experiential and transgenerational models for providing effective family and couples therapy. So, look forward to talking with you more about what you're going to see in this module as we go through it, whether through discussion boards or through individual communication. Yeah, I hope you enjoy and I hope you have a great week. Thanks.